G'day guys, and welcome back to our Kart Class podcast. Today we're going to be discussing how to go-kart in the rain. Now for most of us, we tend to want to drive when it's dry, and when it becomes a little bit wet, it's not as exciting to go to the track because, let's be honest, things are going to wear out quicker. Engines, tyres, cleaning the kart, that takes a little bit more time. The chances of spinning out or things going wrong, probably a lot more evident with the wet weather. Let's face it, that motor racing, it's done in both conditions. It's done in dry, it's done in wet, and so we need to learn how to drive in all conditions so that we can be prepared for any races thrown at us. Now, when it comes to driving in the wet, some of the things we want to look at is choosing the right tyres and the kart setup to the conditions. Now, what we might find sometimes is that it's only a little bit wet, and so the fastest tyre is still a slick tyre. So it's still a dry tyre, but you might have to adjust your driving style or your kart setup because there's just not enough water for the treaded wet weather tyres to actually have enough grip. If there's not enough water on the track, they're going to wear out very quickly. So we've got to make sure that we're choosing the right tyres for the right conditions. Now, as a general rule, I would say that if you're on slick tyres and the track is about, say, 10 seconds or more off, that's a wet weather tyre. Anything sort of under 10 seconds, then it's probably going to still be a slick tyre in the slippery conditions. Now, some of the really quick adjustments that you can make, whether that's on the grid at the last moment. So if you want to stick with your slick tyres, but you want to make some quick adjustments, it can be to widen the front track, so to increase the spaces on the inside of the tyre, and then spacing your front wheels out. That increases your front steer, which obviously helps in the slippery, wet conditions. The other thing is to increase your tyre pressures. So it might mean if you're normally running, say, 15 PSI and there's a little bit of drizzle, you might run 20 PSI. So an extra 5 PSI, that might be sufficient enough to get temperature in the tyre, a little bit extra heat, hopefully you can get a little bit more grip. Another thing you might want to do is you might want to put an airbox cover on so that your engine doesn't suck in too much water. And if that's the case, then you might find that you have a mechanical fault. The engine just fails a plug and you break down. So if you can put a bucket on or a proper airbox cover, that can be a pretty quick and easy thing to try and do. For some of our smaller drivers, we can potentially put in some padding in their seat underneath where their bum's going to go, that it can increase their center of gravity, and that can actually help out with some grip in these wet conditions. So they're just some quick and easy kart setup ideas for you that if you're in a rush, in a pinch, that you can quickly adjust to get a little bit more performance when it's slippery. Now, we need to adjust our driving style for the rain. Things like limiting the wheel spin, how aggressive we are on our steering inputs, how hard we hit the brakes. There's sort of 3 elements that we want to concentrate on. We know when it's wet, we're going to have a lot more sliding taking place, and that's controlled by the acceleration. So if you just go from 0 to 100% on the throttle, the chances are the rear wheel is going to lose traction very quickly and increase the wheel spin. Now, a little bit of wheel spin is always going to be in the wet, but exaggerating that wheel spin means we're not really going any fast. We're sort of sitting on the same spot, spinning the tires. And also, the more wheel spin that you have, the more chances you're going to have of spinning out as well. So just try and have a little bit of throttle control where possible to try and limit that wheel spin. Now with our steering inputs, if you have the smooth steering inputs, the chances are you're going to have understeer when it's wet, but it might take you a little bit longer to get that front end to engage. So having a slightly sharper input, that might just switch on the front tires a little bit quicker and give you a little bit more front steer. And with the brakes, if you tend to, lock up the brakes into most corners or into the hairpin corners, if you do that in the wet, the chances are you're going to lose the rear end very, very quickly as well. So just be mindful that you might have to hit the brakes a little bit more gently and just having that, same as the throttle control, having a little bit more brake control as well. So you can lock up the brakes as long as you are in control of the kart. And if you don't have the confidence, I'd recommend not hitting the brakes too hard as well. Now, the last thing is going to be our racing line. And again, it depends on how much water's on the track, what tyres you elect to use. But if you find yourself on a slick tyre on a wet track, if it's rained midway through the race, just try and set off that racing line. So looking ahead for the shiny part of the track, just keeping those 4 tyres slightly off of that shiny line should give you a little bit more traction. You tend to want to start towards the edge of the track on the outside and then start to make your way in until you find the optimum amount of grip in those conditions as well. So there's some pretty quick and basic setup adjustments and some driving styles that you can try and do next time it rains in the wet weather conditions. As I said, it's definitely the most difficult out of the two compared to the dry and the wet, and we see a lot bigger time variance between the front and the back of the field in the wet conditions because there's more elements to it. There is that wheel spin, there's that brake control so you don't lose the rear end. There's also the setup where it does make a lot of difference. If you have your kart set up quite well in the wet, you can get a bigger advantage than the dry. Hope these tips have given you some advice for the next time it rains on track. And if you guys need to know more about your kart racing needs, then be sure to visit us at kartclass.com. We help out with your kart setup, your driving techniques, and also your racecraft needs. I'm your host, 18-time Australian champion David Cetera. I'll chat to you guys soon. Cheers.